Hi, I'm Scott Johnson, Manager of Production Software at Osborne Engineering, and this video is about how to use Osborne logos and title blocks in AutoCAD. In spring 2020, we are rolling out new logos and new title blocks or frames for AutoCAD and Revit. This is happening in conjunction with development of new civil engineering drawing standards and also a changeover to STB-based plotting instead of CTB-based plotting. However, this particular video only concerns the logos and title blocks. The new logos and title blocks look and work similar to previous versions, but with greater consistency between sheet sizes, additional items relating to signing and stamping, some minor changes to plotting, and some quality of life tweaks to better streamline workflow. Logos. The Osborne and OSports logos are blocks meant to be inserted on the G-Ano logo layer. The logos are already included in the Osborne title blocks, and they can be added to title blocks that are given to us by other organizations. Like when we don't have the lead on a project and we're using Prime Disciplines title block, or when the owner has their own title block that they want us to use. The AutoCAD and Osborne logos include blocks that are based on the OSports logo design, the new OSports logo design, which OSports switched over to in the fall of 2019. Note that there are a total of 4 logos for use on full-size sheets, plus a couple more logos that are in the sketch title block. Of the 4 logos meant for normal project sheets, 2 of them are Osborne Engineering logos and 2 are OSports logos. The Osborne and the OSports logos each come in 2 sizes. There is a slightly larger logo which is meant for use when that company has the lead discipline on a job, and then there's a slightly smaller version of each logo for use when that company has a secondary role on the job. For each title block, you'll choose 1 or 2 logos based on who is involved on the job and what their role is, and then you'll delete the other logos. On a job, if we are given a logo from outside of Osborne, the CAD coordinator for the job has the responsibility of placing our logo or logos into the title block we have been given. To do this, it's just a matter of inserting a block, and these blocks are stored under Q Drive, Production Software, AutoCAD, General Frames. A note about the paths described throughout this video. If you watch and listen carefully, you'll notice that the path that I'm saying isn't actually the path that I'm going to. I'm going to a path that's 1 directory deeper. That's because at the time I'm recording this video, I haven't put the files in what will be their final location. I want to have the videos ready at the time that we actually make the changeover. As soon as we officially transition to using STB files for plotting, the title block will be in the location that I say. And in this case, Q Production Software, AutoCAD, General Frames. However, at the current time when I'm recording this, all of the STB files are being kept in staging areas awaiting deployment. These staging areas for the STB-based files are located wherever the file will eventually be kept, except 1 directory level deeper in a subdirectory called STB. When the transition to STB plotting is officially made, the STB files will be moved from the STB subdirectories up 1 level to the folders that that I'll be saying in this video. At that point, those files will replace the files that are in there, except it won't really be a replacement. The current CTB-based files will be taken out of the folders and moved one directory level deeper in a subfolder called CTB. They'll probably remain in the CTB folders for a couple of years until we finish up all of the CTB-based projects that are already in progress when we transition. All of the directories that I mention in this video will be like this. I'll be telling you where the files will eventually reside, but you'll see me going one directory level deeper in this video. So to place the logos in this title block, supposedly from another company, I just insert a block. Those blocks are kept in the frames folder on the Q drive, and you select a logo based on whether you need Osborne or O Sports and whether we're the lead discipline or a secondary discipline. If it's somebody else's title blocks, chances are somebody else is going to be the lead discipline, so I'm going to select the secondary discipline Osborne logo. And I'm going to place that in this title block. And we'll say there are some other logos, some other disciplines that have the lead on the project, so ours is down a little ways. And I'll add mine, I'll add the Osborne logo into the title block along with others that are presumably in there as well. The project manager for the job needs to decide which Osborne office address should be used for the job. This can be any of Osborne's neighborhood offices or an entry that just lists which states we have a presence in. The address that's selected by the PM will not necessarily be the office that the staff working on the project is located in. Sometimes a PM will want the contact information listed on the sheet to be for an office that's near the project site, even if the staff that are actually doing the design and the drawings are located in a different office. The CAD coordinator for the project is then responsible for ensuring that the address indicated by the PM gets incorporated into the title block. After inserting the logo, if you select it, you'll see that there's a small blue downward pointing triangle over here. That's a grip that indicates that this is a dynamic block. And the grip lets you select a visibility state. In this case, which address we want to appear in the logo. There we go. So at this point I can say I want the Cleveland address to appear, or we can also select an option where we just list the states we're in. Sometimes the lead company on a job will ask us to provide them with our logo so that they can place it in a title block with a bunch of other title blocks from other companies, and then they'll distribute the title block with everyone's logo in it to all of the different firms that are on the design team. Providing them with our logo or logos is fine. It's just that other companies won't necessarily realize how to select the right address. So our CAD coordinator for the job should either modify the block and set it to the desired address before he sends it to them, or the CAD coordinator should call the other firm's CAD coordinator and explain how to select the desired address. Frames. The project's CAD coordinator for a job has the task of either modifying another organization's title block to work with Osborne's STB file, or customizing the Osborne title block to make it indicate information for the project at hand. So let's assume that we're in the situation where we need to modify Osborne's default title block to be appropriate for this project. The default or starter title blocks are stored in the same location where they've traditionally been stored, which is to say on the Q drive, production software, AutoCAD, general frames. And Osborne has a title block for each size of sheet that we might use on a project. There's 22 by 34, or ANSI D size, which plots to 11 by 17 if you plot at half size. There's 24 by 36, or architectural D size. There's 30 by 42, or architectural E1 size. And then lastly, there is 36 by 48, architectural E size, which some people refer to as bedsheet size. So the CAD coordinator will copy the appropriate frame file from the Q drive and store it in the XREF folder for the project. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to copy this file, and then I'm going to go to the P drive, to my project folder, drawings, XREF, and paste the file in here, and then just to make sure that I'm not ever going to accidentally copy one project's title block accidentally into the folder for another project and overwrite it. To make sure I don't do that, I'm going to prefix this title block or frame file with the project number. And then I'm going to open that file. Now, as with previous versions of the Osborne title blocks, elements that stay constant from sheet to sheet, like the actual lines that form the border, or the project name, the project number, the address, owner, logos, and so forth. All of that information that stays the same from sheet to sheet is stored in the file that ends with the word frame. All of the attributes for information that changes from sheet to sheet, like the sheet name, the sheet number, the drawn by, the checked by, and so forth, those attributes are stored in the file that ends with the word attributes, and that file will wind up being inserted as a block on each sheet in the project. So the CAD coordinator starts with this kind of starter outer file from the Q drive, and then proceeds to modify it for the project at hand. Each title block has one instance of each of the four logos mentioned previously: two O Sports, two Osborne, two for the primary discipline, and two for secondary disciplines. The CAD coordinator should select one or two logos of the appropriate size and corporate identity and position those in the title block, and then delete any other logos that aren't going to be needed. And since the title block is potentially going to be used on a lot of sheets, it's not a bad idea to purge those logo blocks after deleting them. The title block has a square in the upper right corner, and this square is meant to hold the logo of the building owner, assuming that the building owner has a logo. If the building owner doesn't have a logo, and Osborne's client is not the building owner, it's an architect or a contractor, construction manager, you can put their logo in this sort of spot of honor in the upper right corner. If they don't have a logo either, then you should take our lead discipline and move their logo up into the box and click to place it, and make sure that the desired office location is showing, and don't worry about the black or white text underneath here. This text is just instructions of whose logo to put up here. This text is on a non-plotting layer, so don't worry about that. You don't need to go to any trouble to delete it or anything. Then we move any other title blocks into position as appropriate. And select appropriate addresses for those as well. And you can include logos from other firms if they are involved on the project. The new logos have a non-plotting center line in this cell, this area of the title block, to help you center the logos between the border lines here. The CAD coordinator then edits other parts of this title block, for instance, filling in these pieces of text with whatever the name of the project at hand is. You can just double click on the text and then type in whatever new text you want. And do that to fill in the project name, the owner, the address, the project number down here, and so forth. This file gets saved to the project's XREF folder for use by all of the Osborne disciplines. Attributes. The CAD coordinator prepares the XREF of the frame, but individual users from each discipline are responsible for setting up each sheet. To do that, tell it that you want to create a new drawing for the first sheet of the project, and select the template that's appropriate for whatever sheet size this project is going to use. When the new drawing opens up, you have some red text from the template that says, in effect, remove this text and replace it with a real title block. So you select the text and you delete it, and then you go to the Insert tab and you tell it attach an XREF. And we select the frame that the CAD coordinator created. And even though the command was called attach, we're actually placing the XREF as an overlay rather than an attachment. We don't need to specify an insertion point. We can just let it default and put it at 0, 0, 0, and it should come in at the proper location. And this brings in the parts of the title block that are constant from sheet to sheet. Then the user will insert the attributes portion of the title block. This has those elements of the title block that will vary from sheet to sheet. And you don't even need to copy the attributes file from the Q drive into the XREF folder. If you are using the Osborne title block, you should be able to just insert the corresponding attributes file directly from the frames folder on the Q drive. Once again, we don't need to tell it that we want to click a point on the screen to insert the attributes at. We can just let them come in at 0, 0, 0, and they should come in at the proper location. And you want to make sure that you do not tell it to explode the attributes file as it inserts it. If you explode it, you will get a bunch of parameter names instead of some parameter values that you can then change. You can provide the attributes values as you insert the block if you want, but I usually just click OK here and let the attributes come in. And if I then need to change some of these attributes, I will just come in and double click and change these values after I place the block. Revisions. Note that each sheet has a series of tag attributes that are part of the attributes file that get inserted onto each sheet. However, also note that the description of the revision or issue and the date of the revision or issue are not parts of the attributes file. Instead, each issue or revision is placed on the sheet as an overlay of an XREF. You should have an XREF for Addendum 1, one for Bulletin 1, one for Bulletin 2, and so forth, however many you need. It's the CAD coordinator's job to create these XREFs for everyone on the project. And the CAD coordinator will do that by first going to the Q drive, and in the frames folder on the Q drive there are a series of tiny little XREF files, addendum1.drawing for construction.drawing for permit.drawing, and the CAD coordinator We'll copy one of these over to the XREF folder for the job. And rename it. This is going to be, let's prefix it with a job number, J2020-99-000, and this is going to be Bulletin 2. Then the CAD coordinator will go in and edit that file. And you can see that this really is a tiny little file. So we're going to change the description on this to Bulletin 2, and we'll change the date to 05/28 of 2020. And that's really all there is to this XREF. It's very tiny. We'll save that. And we don't need it open anymore, so I'm going to close that. And I'm going to attach it into this title block as the next line item in the revision schedule. Unlike the title blocks and the attributes file, I really do need to click a point to insert this line item at, and I can just place that at this grid intersection in the revision schedule, and that's it. Put these XREFs for the revisions only on sheets that actually have a change that's part of that revision. Don't lie in the revision schedule and tell the poor contractor that a sheet is modified in a particular bulletin or addendum if it wasn't. Don't make them waste their time looking for it. The reason why we use an XREF for these line items is to handle situations where the client or the lead discipline calls us up at 4 o'clock on Friday and says, you know that bulletin we were going to issue today? We're not going to be ready for that, so we're going to issue on Monday. You'll need to go through all 50 of your sheets and change the date on all of the bulletin 2 for Monday's date instead of Friday's. And by doing that as an XREF, we don't have to have people to go through all 50 sheets and update every single sheet. Instead, you just have the CAD coordinator update the one XREF file, and then people republish their sheets. The reason why the tag number is not part of the XREF is because Osborne numbers are revisions by sheet, not by project. So in this situation, for instance, there was a prior revision on this sheet that was part of Bulletin 1. We hide that cloud, we leave the delta for it, but then we show the cloud and the delta for Revision 2, which is Bulletin 2. But we might have another sheet that didn't have any prior revisions on it, but it does have something that changed as part of Bulletin 2. So because it's a bulletin and not an addendum, we come in here and we change our delta number to a 1 instead of an A, and then we come in and we attach Bulletin 2 in the first line of the revision schedule. So the same bulletin 2, gets a delta of 2 on one sheet, but only a delta of 1 on another sheet because it's the first revision on that other sheet. Stamp text. The title block has a cell here where a stamp is meant to be placed. The circular array here won't print, it's on a no plot layer. When it comes time to stamp a set of drawings and submit them for permit, the stamp is usually applied in Bluebeam Review, or the plots are wet stamped by a PE who has reviewed the drawings and is registered in the state where the project is. The new title block only has one cell for a stamp, whereas the previous version had 2. We only need 1 now that Bixby stamps for the technology engineers are supposed to be placed in the drawing area instead of in the title block. Don't place stamps in the title block XREF. Usually we do stamps in Bluebeam, but even if you have a drawing file or an image file that you want to apply to the sheets in AutoCAD, put that on each sheet, not in the title block XREF. If you put it in the XREF of the title block, while some other discipline happens to be publishing drawings at the same time, all of the sheets use the same title block XREF, so you might find that you just stamped a bunch of drawings from the wrong discipline. And as a reminder, never send a drawing file, or a Revit file for that matter, out of the office with a live stamp. By live stamp, we mean a stamp that can be lifted out of its proper document and used in other documents. The only files that should ever leave our office with stamps are PDF files. Okay, technically, if somebody has the right knowledge and the right software and patience, they can lift signatures or stamps out of PDF files too, and the knowledge and the software are becoming increasingly common. But even so, let's not make it easy for them. Let's make them work a little bit, at least, if they're going to steal our stamps. Never send a drawing file out of the office that has a stamp in it. Don't even leave the stamp as an XREF and then say, oh, I just won't send them the XREF, and then they won't have the stamp. Don't do that, because maybe in another 6 months somebody asks for another copy of the drawing set, and you have some intern who never worked on the job e-transmit the files and send them off, and now they have your stamp. And if you insert a stamp as a block, print the sheet and then delete the stamp, and then also purge the drawing. And you can probably just purge everything at that point, because if you're stamping it, you're probably done drawing. If you don't purge the stamp out of your drawing, then it's still trivially easy to steal it. When drawings have a wet stamp and/or an ink signature, the presence of the ink, as opposed to toner, helps verify that the drawing has actually been approved by the architect or engineer whose stamp it is. With toner, you know, who's to say that the drawing hasn't been tampered with and then reprinted? Who's to say that an image of the stamp hasn't been scanned and then applied to something the architect or engineer never saw? That's why a lot of jurisdictions require wet stamps and/or ink signatures instead of just laser prints of a stamp. But what about drawings submitted electronically? Those arrive at the destination as a bunch of ones and zeros in a file. How do you put a wet stamp or an ink signature on something made of ones and zeros? You can't, but There's actually something called a digital signature. And it's not just a scan of your signature, it's a legally recognized form of signature that uses an encrypted code that can be applied to files and checked by other people, ensuring that the document was created using the architect or engineer's credentials and that it hasn't been subsequently modified. If we switch over to Bluebeam, for instance, and look at this document that was signed by Sean, we can tell it to tell us about the signatures and validate those signatures, and it lets us know that it was signed twice, once for each revision, and that the document has not been modified since it was signed. That's why the signature is still valid, and that the signature is recognized by the IdenTrust Global Common Certificate Authority, who is in turn recognized by the IdenTrust Global Common Root, who's recognized by the Federal Bridge Certificate Authority, who is recognized by the Federal Common Policy Certificate Authority. So we have a valid chain of trust leading back to the Government Certificate Authority. That chain of trust verifies that Sean is who he says he is. Going back to the AutoCAD document, a digital signature is required on all electronic submissions in the state of Florida. And some jurisdictions in Florida require electronic submissions, so you have to use a digital signature on those submissions. So far, I don't know of any other states that have those requirements, but I think it's only a matter of time before digital signatures start being required in other states. Some parts of the federal government also require digital signatures. Of course, if you print out the digitally signed document onto paper, then once again you just have toner on paper. There's no way to tell whether it's a print of a digitally signed document or just some print of some document with a copy and paste image of somebody's signature and seal. So Florida requires that a particular blurb of text accompany all digital signatures. And this text states that only the digital version of the document is considered to be a proper signed document. Plots can't be verified as authentic. Some engineers have included this blurb in the digital signature that they have. So when they add their digital signature to a PDF in Bluebeam, they get the required Florida text. Other engineers and architects have a digital signature, but they haven't combined it with the required blurb. For the second group of people, which is the majority of people with digital signatures at Osborne, the blurb has to be applied to the drawing before it receives its digital signature. You can't apply it after you apply the digital signature because then you've modified the signed document. We have this XREF file for the blurb, but the XREF needs to include the name of the licensee, and therefore it needs to be modified on a discipline by discipline basis. And to do that, you need to copy the file from Q Production Software AutoCAD General Frames. The Florida blurb is called Florida Stamp Text.drawing. You need to copy that and paste it into the XREF folder for that project. And it's a good idea to prefix that with the initials of the stamp holder. because each person who's going to be stamping drawings on that project needs to have their own version of the Florida stamp text. And you also need to go into that document and edit it so that it includes the name of the licensee. This XREF then needs to be saved and placed on each sheet for that discipline. And it's placed by attaching it as an XREF, similar to what you do for the revision text and a few other items. So we tell it which file we'd like to place, and we can just place that on the sheet, but at the location where these lines intersect in the title block. And that should position it below the stamp that will eventually get placed on the sheet. Once the PDFs are made, the licensee can apply the digital signature. We also have a blurb that management wants us to use for jurisdictions outside of Florida, even if the drawing is just going to have a conventional stamp and signature instead of a digital one. This blurb basically says, hey, it's not okay to take stuff from this drawing without our permission. Once again, the stamp is used very similarly to the Florida blurb. This XREF is also located in Q Production Software AutoCAD General Frames. And this file is called non-certified stamp text. And you just copy it from the Q drive and paste it into the XREF folder for the project. And again, you would want to prefix this with the initials of the stamp holder and edit the file in AutoCAD to include the stamp holder's name and registration information, and then save it and apply it the same way I just did with the Florida blurb. Sketches. Many sheets will ultimately require sketches to respond to RFIs or make corrections. Sketches are handled with separate paper space layout tabs in the same drawing file as the sheet that they modify. We have an 8.5 by 11 title block for sketches. There is no 11 by 17 title block because Osborne policy is that if a sketch will not fit on 8.5 by 11, then you should reissue the whole sheet. The Osborne sketch title block works similar to the other title blocks in that there is a frame file that you XREF, and the CAD coordinator for the project should have placed this title block in the XREF folder before anybody needs to place it. This file just gets placed at 000 like the other title blocks do. And then there is also an attributes file on the Q drive that you need to place as a block. So we navigate to Q, Production Software, AutoCAD, General Frames. And we insert Osborne 8.5 by 11 attributes. Again, we place it at 0, 0, 0 with a scale factor of 1. And in this case, the attributes include a 2-line sheet title, the name of the issue that this is part of, and then the sheet number and the sketch number for the sketch. Then at that point, the person who is creating this sketch sheet needs to create a viewport. Viewports, one viewport. And in this case, we're going to activate the viewport. We're going to be showing this area that's been clouded here. And we're going to click on the viewport and we're going to change the scale so that it matches the sheet, 1/8 inch scale. And if we want to, we can then bring the borders in as close as we want to show the area that this sketch is all about. Like so. Now, before the individual users use the sketch title block on any particular drawing that they are working on, it should be set up by the CAD coordinator for the job. You'll see that, for instance, the sketch title block that's on the Q drive has 2 logos that are shown, one for O Sports, one for Osborne Engineering. The CAD coordinator for the job should copy the frame file from Q Production Software AutoCAD General Frames and then paste it into the XREF folder for the job that you're working on. And after doing that, the CAD coordinator should remove one of the logos and should modify the address so that it indicates the address that was selected by the project manager. They should then save it, and it's probably a good idea to include the project number as a prefix for the file name. Then the file is ready for the individual users from the various disciplines to use. Printing. Printing or plotting is just a little bit different from how it was done for previous versions of the title block. We've tried to streamline the plotting process with correct page setups and the correct style table, which is osborne.stb, by the way, with those coming in as the defaults so that you don't need to define anything or change settings. One of the settings that is different from before is that with the new title blocks and templates, we now plot windows as opposed to plotting extents or plotting the layout. And the correct window for each sheet size should already be selected as part of the template, so that that should be taken care of ahead of time for you. This will make it easier to keep the frame positioned properly on the plotted sheet. It will also avoid printing any stray elements that might exist in paper space outside of the title block. Both the sheet layout and The sketch layout should already have plotting windows of the correct size and position predefined for you. This concludes this video. I hope you find it useful, and I hope that you find that the title block changes make your work a little bit easier. If you have questions, please submit a ticket by sending an email to support@osborne-eng.com. Thank you.